Make no mistake about it, Mamelodi Sundowns are shaking in their boots. This is not the final they wanted. They're going to be facing a seriously good football side on the 7th of October, and they wanted to avoid that football side at all costs. Remember, their current crop of players hasn't played a lot of finals, while our current crop are going to be playing their third final in under a year or a year or something like that, and that says a lot. And sometimes that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that you've lost 2 games in a row in a week. It doesn't matter that you've lost 3 games in a row, actually, and it doesn't matter that you've qualified for the final via defeat. All that matters sometimes is that you are in the thing, and Mamelodi Sundowns don't want you to be there. That's all that matters. And yeah, maybe this is not going to be the most amazing review in terms of, giving you a great tactical breakdown and things like that of what happened in the game, or giving you a very biased kind of reaction, how good Stellenbosch were, even though I want to take this time to say that, dare I leave this seat tonight without mentioning that Stellenbosch is a seriously good side. I think they are very much underrated. How seriously good they are. You know that they've stopped us in all 3 games. I think in the game that we won against them, we obviously had the man advantage, and for a significant part of that game, about 30 minutes or so before they get a red card, we're struggling to get past them. And I do want to give credit where credit is due. I think Steve Barker is building a machine of a football side that works with what it has, and it does well with what it has. But yeah, what I said in my preview before this game is that, Stellenbosch will be coming into this one with the hopes of getting that early goal. I thought they're going to come out as soon as the whistle blows, that first 10 minutes, those first 15, they're going to be at it and try and get that early goal. They get the goal in the 22nd minute. Struggling to talk. They get the goal in the 22nd minute, and yeah, almost as if these things are written. This is the situation that I thought we ought to avoid at all costs. We ought to avoid Stellenbosch getting that first goal, because what they will do then is, kind of play without pressure, knowing that they can get the game to its latter stages and hopefully throw the kitchen sink around the 80th or 75th minute or so, or maybe the last 5 minutes of the first half, maybe the first 5 of the second half, those crucial times in a football match. Then they can throw the kitchen sink then and try and get the second. And if they get the second, we all know the narrative, then we've got to score in order to get the game into extra time. And it almost kind of went in that direction. However, the boys did the business, they did the job. We are in the final, and that's all that matters for me. I want to start with a couple of things that I noted, and something that I can't shut up about, and you guys will forgive me if I start to sound like a broken record, but I think this is something worth repeating, I think 1,000 times, and that is Ndlondlo's growing significance in this Orlando Pirates squad. I think, again, you see, quite how he's become the heart of that midfield. My prediction before the game started was that we're going to play with Thabang Munari and Ndlondlo in midfield. Thabang Munari obviously misses out, and we play with Baloni, whom I'll come on to talk about in just a bit. But the growing influence of Ndlondlo in this Orlando Pirates squad is something to marvel at. I think he's becoming that one player that is irreplaceable, apart from someone like Paseka Mako, maybe even Nkosinathi Sibisi in defense, and maybe even Zakhele Elpasa, although that's maybe a bit arguable. But I think, my first name's on the team sheet, with importance and significance to what we are doing as a club. I think Ndlondlo in the heart of that midfield is the first one, alongside Paseka Mako and maybe Nkosinathi Sibisi. But I want to talk about Ndlondlo. I think he's been doing fantastic so far this season. This is not the first time I say this on this platform, and the more that I say this, it's actually good, because this means that the club is going to be doing well, because he's right at the heart of what we do and what we try and do. He came back in as if he'd never left, and just gave us that spark. I know we didn't play the most amazing football, and I think most of that has to do with the fact that when we got in the position, so the problem wasn't that the players further back were getting us to in the positions that we may attack the Stellenbosch defense in. It's rather that when we got in those positions, then we lacked that cutting edge, that final product, that final pass, those sorts of things, few bad decisions here and there, someone holding onto the ball or something like that, or a poor cross and things like that. And you can't blame people like Ndlondlo, who are doing fantastic, and he's playing a lot of something I always say, he plays a lot of imaginative passes where you think he's going to play it, the obvious pass that maybe someone like Tim or Munari would, and it's important that they do play those obvious passes in order to keep the ball. But Ndlondlo will sometimes disguise and act like he's going to, play in the pattern that we kind of have of going maybe to the side and then pulling the opposition one side and then maybe trying to play the diagonal and switch it to the opposite side and things like that. So Ndlondlo is that he's that wild card in our midfield who'll sometimes just look the one way and then pass it the other, try and thread those vertical direct passes into people like Maswanganyi and Saleng and Hoto if they're in those pockets, in those holes behind the midfielders, in between the defense and the midfielders. And I think Ndlondlo's been doing fantastically at that role, and his influence is growing with the game. He's looking like such a massive figure, which is a huge juxtaposition, thinking about how relatively tiny he is to the normal football player. He reminds me of Santi Cazorla. You guys might know. If you don't, he used to play for Arsenal. Look at him, watch the videos, in the way that he controls and dictates that tempo, coming in deep. He's like an offensive midfielder that's playing deep. And someone commented in the comment section, I can't remember who it was, and was saying, I think I saw it this morning, I haven't I beg your pardon, I haven't responded to that comment, but it was speaking about that Ndlondlo is more suited to playing further upfield. I mean, there is an argument for that, to play him further upfield, though he starts to be in competition with someone like Maswanganyi and, Lesedi Kapinga, who came on, who maybe let me quickly say what I want to say about Kapinga and then move on quickly back to Ndlondlo, is that Kapinga is the sort of person that with the ball at his feet, you just think he's going to make things happen. That's my summary of Lesedi Kapinga. There's not a lot to say that you guys don't know about, but maybe I'll get to talk to him some more in future podcasts. But it is so good to have someone whom, when you give the ball, you think, all right, there's an expectation of he's going to create something going forward, right? However, if Ndlondlo is playing further upfield, he starts to be in conversation and in competition with those sort of players. And I think it's a waste, because then it means you've got to play someone who's more of like a sitter and a conservative sort of defensive midfield. Whereas when you're playing Ndlondlo there alongside someone like Tim, someone like Munari, even Sipelo Baloni, and I'll talk about Baloni in a second. I'm not trying to leave cliffhangers all over the place. You've got a good balance of, someone who's going to protect, someone who's going to be safe in the passing, someone who's going to, read the game, break up play, that sort of thing. And you juxtapose that with Ndlondlo, who's going to be someone who creates from deep, because you don't want all your creative players to play further upfield. So when you play Ndlondlo in a deeper position, I did a video about this, you can check it out, just talking more on Ndlondlo's role, showing a few screenshots about him. But when he's playing a bit deeper, he creates from a deep position, and he makes sure that we are able to progress the ball into those offensive positions in the place where we want to now create the chances and score the goal. So I'm not mad at Jose Rivero playing him where he plays him. I think it's actually a brilliant tactic. And in his absence, it looks like we are missing Ndlondlo. I saw that in the Sundowns game because I did a video previously, the video before this one, which is a preview to the game that we just played. I spoke about how, Maswanganyi was the one who was then forced to come deep and was used as somewhat of a makeshift left back when we're building up, sometimes playing on that left side because of, I think, Ndlondlo's absence, and to be able to kind of facilitate the strategy and get the ball and make those isolations and things like that. Moving along, to Spelo Baloni. You know what? I still want to reserve comment about Spelo Baloni. I was at the stadium and the stadium was completely mad at him. There were just, a lot of groans and moans every time that he got the ball, because this is what I think. I think he holds on to the ball a bit longer than, he should. Maybe it's because, he's still fresh from lower divisions coming into this division. He hasn't maybe grasped the idea that you don't have as much time as you need. So you don't have 2 seconds in this league. If you had 2 in the NFD, maybe you've got 1.5 or 1 second in the DStv Premiership. So the standard is higher. I think he's a good player. He looks like he's a good player with potential for me. You guys maybe are mad at that, but I think something he's got to learn is that you don't have enough time. And I think when the stadium starts to turn on you, and it's something that I've spoken about, which I've got negative comment about, but I can't control as just one podcaster who's watched by, thankfully, you and 1,000 other people every video. I can't control that to tell the stadium, hey guys, let's not turn on our own players. But it's something that we've got to learn, that especially in these moments where we need the team to perform, turning on him is the last thing you want to do. And as soon as the stadium was turning on Baloni, I think he was starting to make some poor decisions here and there, and then was lacking a bit of quality in moments. I remember one particular situation in which he had time to find a cross into the box, and he just guided into the fans behind the goals. So I think, he's someone who's got to learn that he's not got enough time. And how do you learn that? It's with games and experience. And I think as bad as it would have been and how he'll be kicking himself after this performance, but it's actually good for him going forward. I think he's got to learn, and he will learn that, in my next game, I've got to make sure that I shift it quickly. Sometimes I don't need to dwell on it and try and protect it and use my body and shield it. Sometimes let me just play it back to Sibisi, who'll then play it to where I initially wanted to play it. So that's something I think he'll develop in. I also want to comment on Patrick Maswanganyi, whom I've got a couple of things to say about him. I think the performance wasn't as bad as what it was at Mamelodi versus Mamelodi Sundowns midweek. I spoke at length about why it was so bad if you watched the preview before this one. I think in this game, maybe at times, so what I think every time about Patrick Maswanganyi is that, he's got this weird but good thing that he does of stepping on the ball. So most of us who've played, at different levels, but have been fortunate to be taught while growing up, is that when you receive the ball, you don't receive the ball and step on it. You want to make sure that you shift it out of your feet when it comes to you. So how you trap the ball, how you control the ball, is that you don't step on it because you stop the game, and then you need more seconds to get it out of your feet. And then as soon as you try and get it out of your feet, the defenders are here, the opposition are here to close you down. So when you receive the ball, you want to make sure that you get it out of your feet and let the game flow. Let it continue like that. Maswanganyi's got this weird thing that he does, and I think it's just his trademark of, controlling the ball by stepping on it and then quickly shifting it out. So it's a dummy that he kind of does, which he'll send, defenders all over the place by doing that. He sometimes will step on it when it comes, and you think he hasn't looked over his shoulder because he's got this slowness when he's on a ball, which is his thing. I know a lot of slow players. Over the years, I've watched a lot of, we affectionately call them slow poison, because they destroy you with how slow they are. You think you're going to get the ball, and then next thing he's gone. He's seen you long time ago. You think he hasn't looked back, but he's already checked over his shoulder, and you're coming, and then, he does a feint and steps on the ball, and you think, okay, maybe if I press now, I'll get the ball, and then it's out of his feet and things like that. And that's something that I love about him. I think it's his trademark. However, I think when that thing is not working out, he dwells on the ball a little bit. I've seen it in these last 2 games, and it's something that I think he's got to get out of him, and sometimes keep it a bit simple, and get the ball out of your feet, and play those one touches. The thing that made us think that Maswanganyi is the best attacking midfielder in the league is exactly that. He makes the right decisions. He sometimes lets it go. He sometimes doesn't dwell on it. He'll release it first time. But in the last 2 games, I've seen moments twice or 3 times in which I think he wanted to dwell on the ball, and he just got pressed and then lost the ball. And I don't know whether it's a tactic that, the coach is emphasizing, I don't know if it's something that is emphasized by the coach that, you know what, I want you to dwell on the ball, because what it does is it attracts a lot of men to Maswanganyi. And in attracting a lot of men to Maswanganyi, it frees up other people. So he's someone that can escape those tricky situations, those tight spaces when he's being pressed. We know that when he's gliding on the football pitch, he gets away of those out of those situations with ease, and is brilliant, and he looks amazing. However, when it's not working out, then they win the ball back, and sometimes he'll be in deep positions. Like today, I thought, and in the Sundowns game, he was losing the ball in very deep positions, where with the turnover of possession there, we are now at 6s and 7s in our defense, and have got to run back to our goal with, a shortage in our numbers versus the opposition. So, however, I think he's another one who's massively important in what we're doing, and it looks like it with every game. Looking at his movement, I think he's someone that has amazing off the ball movement. The amount of unselfish runs that Maswanganyi makes in a football game, if you don't have the privilege of watching these things live, you only obviously see what the camera is showing you. However, he's always making these runs, to the sides and stuff like that, and those runs are freeing up these spaces for people all over the place. And I think that's just something that when I contrast him to Kabelo Dlamini, who I think is fantastic on the ball as well, I think, you guys, I'm going to put something out there. I'm going to come out swinging and say this. You guys might criticize me for it. I think on the ball, Kabelo Dlamini is somewhat as good as what we think Maswanganyi is. If he's less than, then he's not far off. But it's no competition or anything like that. I just want to make the point that Kabelo Dlamini is really amazing on the ball. I think where he goes missing is creating for us, whether with the ball. I think at times he does have a poor end product, obviously. But I think also without the ball, with the, with the movement and the off the ball stuff, I think Kabelo Dlamini is sometimes caught wanting in that department, which is why I think he's going to struggle to replace someone like Maswanganyi, who works. You think that he's tired. He looks a bit tired every time with the way that he runs and stuff like that, how his body is like. He looks like he's someone who's not in the game, but he's constantly running. He'll chase people back into his own half, and then the next thing you'll see him opening up in those gaps, in those pockets, in those spaces, in those tight spaces in between the midfield and the defense, trying to receive, making runs all over the place. So he's an amazing footballer that you might not appreciate when you don't get to see him live. And that's just something that I want to put to you guys to maybe try and observe when you watch this. I think what he gives us, sometimes people will criticize the one-off losing off the ball and things like that, but maybe they'll also criticize the coach for not substituting him when it seems like the ball is bouncing off him in the last two games especially. However, I think the off the ball stuff is he's somewhat of the glue. I described him and Ndlondlo as the two brains of Orlando Pirates. The one is playing further upfield, the one is playing deeper, but both of them are important. They make, they are the creative hub of this football club. And I think I just wanted to make that comment. I've got a few notes before I forget, because my mind is obviously all over the place. Something that I was particularly impressed with, which I want to talk about, is also, Miguel Tim. Maybe it's something that I don't emphasize enough on this podcast. I am on here talking a lot about, we've got an aging midfielder and things like that, and maybe it comes off as a negative, with a negative connotation and stuff like that. It comes off very negative. However, I do want to say that the positive thing about having someone like Mnari and Tim, and maybe you can throw in Makaula in there, maybe you can throw in someone like Ben Motwari in there, people like Vincent Pule, Tim Nkosi Lodge, the people that have been there and done that. Kemet Erasmus is another one. If I'm forgetting someone, sorry for that. Maybe even Ofori you might consider as one of those players who are in that leadership group at Orlando Pirates. I think what's important, maybe Paseka Mako as well, and not forgetting our captain as well, St. Maela and Dion Horto as well. Having those people is that, again, it's something that you will not see when you are not watching the game live. We had a water break around the 22nd minute, I think, after conceding the goal, or maybe before, but I think it was midway in that first half. We had a water break, and the amount of instructions that Tim was barking at these players was insane. Tim was just barking at everyone, barking instructions at Paseka Marco barking instructions at Mtetwa. I think even at Ndlondlo he was barking a few instructions. And I think those are the people that you will not appreciate as a fan sometimes because they're not on the pitch. But these are the people that are helping this cause that we all are rallying behind. This cause, which is the 3 points on a Saturday or the qualification for the final, as in the case today. These are the people that when they're not playing, they're doing that sort of thing for the club. But Tim did come on, and I think it was a fantastic substitution. The substitution of Shandu and Baloni was, for me, great substitutions. I think I'm really impressed with a coach that is able to intervene in a football match when it's not going particularly well. I love when a head coach identifies problems and he solves them. And the problem was obviously that Baloni was starting to keep it too much in that midfield, and the worry was turnover of possessions, and we know the speed of that Stellenbosch team going forward. By the way, fantastic footballer, Palace in that midfield. But yeah, he's someone that I'm keeping an eye on, going into the future. I think he was part of Stars of Africa, maybe even played with people like Maswanganyi and Dlamini at some point. I'm not particularly sure around their age group, if they played in the same age group and stuff like that, but I think he's a fantastic midfielder and he's someone to keep an eye on. Every time that I've seen him, I think he's those quietly keeping things ticking kind of players that you don't notice, and sometimes that's what you want in your midfield, especially if he's playing alongside someone whom you want to grab the headlines like Ndlondlo and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Baloni was starting to struggle a little bit, and I think the introduction of Tim was just to shore things up, to keep it responsible in that midfield. And Tim is obviously a darling at Orlando Stadium. Everyone absolutely loves him. And I love him as well, by the way. And fantastic, introduction. Something I thought was interesting was the change in positions. So again, I've spoken on this podcast about how Ndlondlo is always the one who comes deep when we build up from the back. He's the one that will come deep. So rather, maybe let me put it like this. The left central midfielder of Orlando Pirates, whoever's playing there, in the last game against Sundowns, it was Thabang Monare. Baloni was the right central midfielder. In this game, Ndlondlo replaced Thabang Monare. He's the one that was playing left central midfield. The left six, the left-sided six, is the one that will always come deep to build up from the back, and then the right-sided six will push up and give the numbers upfield. It's something that I want to explore a little bit and maybe watch and think about as to why the Pirates are using the left-sided midfield. I do think it's something to do with Marco kind of inverting lately, coming into the number 8 position when we're building up at times. So, but it's something that I hope to speak about in the near future when I've watched it enough to understand why we're using the left-sided midfielder to come deep and help us in build up of the two double six, the two pivots. We use the one on the left to come deep and help us build up, and then the one will kind of push up, and then this right-sided one will be the one that remains and protects us, while the one on the left will be the more offensive one. Except in the last game, Monari was the one who was remaining, and Baloni was more of the one that was adding that number when we go forward. I beg your pardon, but as soon as Tim came on in this game, he was the one that was helping us in the build-up. Ndlondlo was shifted to the right. So that's a fascinating one for me. I would have thought that Ndlondlo will be the one that stays deep and builds up because of what I've described as he's very agile, very much, easy with the agility and turning and things like that, which is important when you are a pivot, because you've got to be able to swing the point of attack from, receiving the ball and swinging your body with half turns and things like that with ease to be able to progress the ball and move it along to, maybe the fullbacks, or turning and moving forward and things like that. Well, Tim was used there when he was introduced. Ndlondlo was moved a bit further up, and that was an interesting observation for me. But I don't want to go on for too long. I think I'm going to be all over the place because there's so many things that I saw in this game. Maybe I don't promise, guys, but maybe I'll do a tactical kind of dive into what happened in this football game. For everyone who's upset that I'm talking about Orlando Pirates right now, I'm not being fair. Why am I not talking about Stellenbosch? Why am I not talking about how Stellenbosch stopped Orlando Pirates? Why am I not talking about how Pirates, struggled with this one? But like I said, these are the days. This is why we love football. Make no mistake about it, guys. We ought to bask in this moment. A lot of teams that I am thinking of currently haven't tasted this moment in about 9 years. So we ought to bask in them. Sometimes a reaction, a review has got to wait for us to actually say that we are boss And everyone knows that in this league, and Mamelodi Sundowns currently know that. But let me leave it here. I'll do a proper, a preview of that Mamelodi Sundowns game in the future. Until then, up the mighty Bucks. Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video from Talking Buccaneers. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our future content.